Hey, Kurt, can't hear you yet. What's up, everybody? Jonathan Peoples, you are on the right link. Welcome to Jenny Winny and the Average Dude. I'm so excited about this week, Jenny Winny.
I know you are. Well, it's
been on my mind for the last week.
Well, last week was a little, stressful.
Last week was a little stressful.
Yeah,
you got your first taste of starting it without your cohort, your partner in crime.
I was thrown into it. It was like being thrown into a pool. Okay.
Thrown into a pool.
And you don't know how to swim. And I was just like, oh, okay. So I'm Jenny Winny and everybody just wants to talk to me anyway. And
that was tough. I wanted to kick that rock down the road and just say, we'll postpone it because I didn't want to put that pressure on you.
I honestly wanted I didn't want you to just kick the rock. I just wanted you to just annihilate it, throw it. But I survived.
You survived.
Somebody reached out to me and said they'd like to hire me for some IT work.
Oh yeah. Oh nice. Well, there you go. Got a little IT side gig.
Uh-huh.
Well, you've got enough things going on. You've got to put your time into the boutique. You've got to help with this little podcast. You got a lot going on.
I do. And I have to have time to watch TV.
You got to have time to watch TV. See, now I'm not a big TV watcher. I was on Eric's show where he did the questions, the pop culture stuff.
But this was, there's a new documentary out, Michael J. Fox, Still.
Yes.
It is good.
It's good.
It's so good. And then it just took me back.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, I'm
back to the future.
Yeah. It took me back to Family Ties. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I was watching old Family Ties, and I was like, "Oh man!" Now
Family Ties came on Thursday night. Remember, it came on like that 8:30 time slot back in the day,
right after the Cosby Show. No, was it after the Cosby Show? I don't even remember. But
I didn't watch the Cosby Show. I loved Michael J. Fox. I thought he was great, and I wanted to be Alex P. Keaton when I was younger. Well, as a matter of fact, I wore a tie in the 5th grade. I showed up to school with a tie on.
Oh, that worked well, didn't it?
that didn't go over too well.
You know what? My son, he is almost 27 now.
Yeah.
He didn't even know about Alex P. Keaton.
Yeah.
But once he started public school in the 4th grade, he carried a briefcase.
Did he?
And I said, hey.
Bet that didn't get him picked on.
Needless to say, I was like, I don't think they're going to, let that, that's not going to be cool. He said, oh, it's cool. I said, okay, we're going to just see how that works out. It didn't work out. But something else exciting for me, not really for you, but way back in the day, since I'm 49.
49.
Way back in the day, when I first started out in business and stuff, I was a personal trainer with Clyde.
Yep.
We started that off Main Street Fitness. It was fantastic.
Yes.
It was almost like a little family. Me and him were talking about it. It was like almost like a sitcom.
Oh, yeah.
I was in my 20s then, and so anyway, we're going to do a reunion this weekend.
Well, that's fun.
The old gang back.
Getting the band back together.
Yeah. Some of us will be on a walker. Some of us will be just fat.
Yeah.
I mean, but
well, you've stayed in good shape all these years, so that'll be fun seeing everybody.
Yeah, it'd be like a class reunion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Anything else going on?
No. But I do have to say, if you can watch that documentary still, watch it.
Still, okay. I will. I do like Michael J. Fox, so I may check that one out. So Jonathan Peoples, thank you. We see Jonathan in the comments. Always appreciate him. And Joe's on here. And Joe, I appreciate you as well.
Yep.
Just got in to hear the great guests. I'm excited. We've got 2 great guests. We actually have a sponsor. So our very first show with the sponsor, also a friend of mine. It's Chris Simmons.
You've heard the
Chris
name.
Simmons with the Industrial Network Group. So many things happened after I joined the Industrial Network Group. It's been such a big part of my personal growth journey. That all started with a phone call to our first guest. So I'm gonna go ahead and invite Chris on here, and here we go. And there's Darian Blue.
Wow.
There he is.
I'm live.
How does it feel?
Chris, great to have you on here, man.
Man, I feel like I'm on a talk show. This is incredible.
Listen, we were so excited. And I mean, listen, if you ever see the show, ING is at least mentioned, I don't even know how many times anyway.
Well, like I say, yeah. Even without the sponsorship, we ring that ING bell because it presents so many great opportunities for me, Chris. As you know, that was my first leadership role. I've always just been the sales guy, right? Out making prospecting calls by myself with a cell phone, not leading a group, and the relationships that I found after getting involved in a networking group, it's led to leadership opportunities. And Chris was the person that said, "Hey, I think you can do this." And so, Chris, thank you for that.
Daniel, I always said your trajectory is much higher than mine. So I'm very proud and honored what you and Jeannie are doing. I could have just kept listening to you guys. You guys have great chemistry, and I'm glad I'm sponsoring this early because the cost is probably going to go up.
Hey, it might go up by the end of the show here. You never know.
Yeah. One thing I've been impressed. Of course, Daniel's not just a business relationship, just a personal friend, but Jenny, your business. I have 3 daughters and a wife who love to shop and who love dresses. So I love your reels where you change clothes. It reminds me of America's Got Talent. I love that reel.
I know.
Hey, Chris, we've got to answer this question. Joe wants to know: is Chris Simmons related to Gene Simmons from Kiss? I see the resemblance.
I wish I was.
Well, can I ask a question, Daniel?
Sure.
I've come to one of the ING little meet. I've come to a couple of them. Tell people what that is, though. Really, what ING is.
Thank you. Well, the vision years ago. It's amazing. Coming up on our 9th year. And, when that started, I was working as a vice president for a construction company, and I was trying to find a group of people who I could network with that knew more than I did. And I always said I never wanted to be the smartest person in the room. I wanted to get around people that knew the business better, and I couldn't find it. I went to several meetings and a lot of different groups, but most of the groups were not focused on the industrial market. And, I want to say I had some business plan, but I didn't. I mainly wanted to get around like-minded people that could challenge me and help me and ultimately help the company I was with. And once I got in there, I just realized the need of so many different people that were coming to it and saying, man, we need this in our area. And it turned out to be something that's dramatically impacted my life. The biggest thing, not just from a business, is just the incredible people that we've been able to meet. Daniel, I can think of the first time he came visited, and I knew immediately he's going to be just a rising star and just somebody that came in and brought energy and has been a mentor. I tell him just from a sales perspective, he just has it. And some people, when you're around them, they just make you feel better and they make you be better. And really that's, as far as getting leads and growing your business, all that comes with it. But the main thing is just relationships. And this is why I think I enjoy what y'all do. You're so focused on helping build people and build relationships. And what an incredible thing. And I just commend you guys for doing it.
Yeah. Chris, I know that I remember when I was, it was my first sales job. I was 19 years old. I worked for Chris Martin, Electrotech was the name of the company. He said, build a leads group. People don't realize how hard that is to do what you've done. And not only have you done it here in Spartanburg, how many chapters and states are you in now?
Well, we're, I think, 10 states right now, all the way up to Twin Cities, Minnesota.
Wow.
Detroit. We're all through Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina, North Carolina. So we've been fortunate. It's amazing. Daniel had a call 2 weeks ago with a gentleman out of California. He has a salesperson that's in one of our groups, and their company has a division. He said, hey, I want to bring this to California. So, that's where we're at. We're just
coast to coast, baby.
Well, we're not out looking for spots. We're just looking for great people that we have a great system. We'll help people build it. And the main thing is our company is not about building our network. It's about building the peoples that are in it. So if we never forget that, then we'll keep growing. It's more about the people than us. And that's why I think it's been incredible for me and for the others. If as long as we can keep that mindset, we'll keep growing.
Well, what I would like to say, if you're in the industrial sales world, if you're selling to all of these in the Southeast, obviously manufacturing is blowing up. If you're in sales as a vendor, supplier for these companies, the Industrial Network Group, it's an amazing network group to get tapped into so that you can find out what's going on. You can meet like-minded individuals. And then too, Chris, I know you're looking for chapter coordinators, which is a different level, not just a member, but this is someone that's going to build that group, build a team. I love building. I've got a great team in Spartanburg. And I love, I mean, it's a support group. You kind of multiply yourself, right? And just tell folks what you're looking for and kind of how that works.
I'll be brief. Just again, if you're in an area that you're focused on growing, especially in the industrial market, and there's not an ING in your area, talk to us. We'd love to partner with you and show you our system. We'll help you build your network. And along you're building ours. So we'll team up with you, roll up our sleeves and help you grow your business and grow your network. And I really believe that's the power of this format and other formats like ING is we're just reaching so many different people. And I'm just thankful you guys giving me a chance to sponsor. And I'm telling you, if you're watching this, man, support this podcast because they're supporting people and sponsor it because you guys are getting the word out for businesses. So thank you. I couldn't thank you more.
Oh,
and you guys have done it.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for being number one sponsor, and we'll see what happens if we can get number two. And I appreciate your friendship, Chris, and being part of the group. It's helped me immensely, as you know, and look forward to the future.
Y'all have a great thing, and congratulations. Awesome. And everybody I talk to, I always say you got to be in y'all's podcast. So I'll people y'all's way.
Hey, number one fan.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. See ya. All right. Well, there you go. So I thought what we would do with the sponsorships, if someone wants to sponsor the show, we come on, we talk to them a little bit about their business, hear a little bit about their story. And then maybe as we build up that week, I'll do some videos and things like that to incorporate.
Like sponsored by
Jenny. Right, sponsored by. I can always sell things that I'm passionate about, Jenny. You know me, right?
For ourselves.
Yeah. Hey, if you have to, if you got to do that, you have to.
I'll have my business sponsors.
Chris made an excellent point. He said it's about meeting new, unique people, and you never know where you're going to find these folks. So for me, our guest, I was on Twitter. There's more out there than LinkedIn, right? But I was on.
You said there is. Wow.
Well, but I'd like to. But you can connect with amazing people that are just people that you haven't met before that you would never run into. And then when you've got a podcast, you get an opportunity to talk to these people.
Yep.
So that's what today's all about. I'm right there with everybody else. We're going to find out a little bit more about my guest. What I will say about Kurt Doolittle before we introduce him, I find very thought-provoking, intelligent, and just doggone interesting, right? So I've got all sorts of questions to ask him. We're going to bring him on the podcast now. Kurt, welcome.
Hello, folks.
How's it going?
It's going fine. I haven't seen you before. You're a lovely pair of people. Thank you very much. It's better to be on screen with handsome people than funny looking people. Although it might not do me any service. I mean, I don't need too much competition.
Well, Kurt, I appreciate you joining us today. Like I say, your Twitter, if you're not following you, some of you may be the first time you've heard Kurt's name. I highly recommend following Kurt on Twitter. Who would you say your content on Twitter is for? Who are you looking to connect with the content that you produce?
If you want, I'm a nerd, right? So I work, so if you want to look at the way You want to really understand, not about blaming and shaming and all that other. Understand what's wrong, how to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I did. And it's and I can't really be too nerdy on these interviews because hell, I can be hella nerdy, if you know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
beyond where I might tolerate it myself. So so I have to always work this line between saying, well, I do very complicated things, but the trick is, can you reduce those complicated things to a set of paragraphs that a person that's got a little bit of life experience, it's hard to understand.
Layman can understand.
Can understand. Now, it takes a little bit for laymen to learn a few of the words, right?
Right.
Because a lot of what we did because of our traditions, right? It's about right and wrong, moral and immoral, and it's a lot, and it's our truth and falsehood are built heavily out of right, wrong, and moral and immoral. And so when you start to talk about how things are value neutral, in other words, how to treat them as true and false, as well as moral and immoral and right and wrong, what happens is that you speak in basically economic language, right? Because economics is a value neutral language of equilibrium. So there's a few economic words you got to learn, and then I try to teach people things like, we don't really live in a democracy. We live under a rule of law republic, and that rule of law is very specific. It's not like the rest of the world calls they have rule of law. It's Anglo rule of law, which is the only kind of rule of law that isn't fake. All right, and it's called commonality, naturality, natural law, which is basically the science of human cooperation. We don't think of it that way. Commonality, which means we all got to agree if it's bad.
Yeah.
Right? And then concurrency, we all got to agree across regions, classes, and sexes if it's good. In other words, we don't have to agree on what's bad because nature tells us what's bad. Well, frankly, you could spin it the other way. God tells us what's bad, and he made nature's laws and whatever. I just stick with nature's laws are the laws of man, nature, and nature's God. So if you go that way, great. So I'm just trying to keep it so that, I can try to give people a few words at a time so they can understand, because the truth is they were intentionally not taught this stuff that our founders knew in order to get away with what's going on today.
Yeah.
So I have to do a lot of teaching, and I have to figure out how to not teach like it's chemistry and teach it like it's a little more closer to morality. And that's a way harder job than you'd think it would be.
That's funny. Hey, now I'm gonna pull back a little bit here, and I want to learn a little bit more about you. But first, I want to talk about the thing that let's talk about you first. Actually, let's talk about your upbringing, where it all started. I know you started some tech companies when you were younger. That's one thing that I read. Is that right?
When I was younger, you call me an old man. I think you just called me an old man.
I can mute him if you'd like for me to.
No. I got you understand, like, male thing of shit talking is like how you earn love and respect.
Yeah, that's part of what we are.
You communicate. I'm willing to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So I'm born in Connecticut in a small, very old Puritan family. Right, moved to Connecticut, Western New York State, which, if you don't know, is where all fundamentalism basically comes from. And I didn't know that, right? As a kid, I just lived around a bunch of Mennonites and that kind of, other things. And, you don't realize that all these places, they came out of that area, right? So, and then in high school, we moved back to Connecticut. And then I started doing business in Boston and then around the world. So basically what I did is I built tech companies. And I built them mostly out of the Seattle area. And it's for a simple reason. Back in the day, making money off of Microsoft was like running around with a freaking laundry basket, just trying to catch it as fast as you can because it's falling out of the sky. So I built a bunch of tech companies around that sphere. And, they're big, $100 million companies, right? I built some smaller ones too. I built $10 million one.
Yeah, just a little couple million. Small.
Yeah.
this is a thing. Like I listen to you guys talking about construction. I know a lot about construction because I designed some of the software for the great big construction companies that everybody knows the name of internationally, right? So I know a little bit about construction. That's a freaking hard business. It's hard to make a buck in construction because everybody's trying to make sure they get a little bit of piece of this, a little bit, and it's really hard. I mean, at the big scale, even in construction, you make money on the lawsuits afterward.
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's where you make your money, in the lawsuits. So
it's very, very tight margins in construction.
It's very brutal. Now look at the technology. All right, I mean, if I pay people $150,000 a year, right, and that means I'm billing them out at $300,000 or $350,000 a year. So I mean, the margins are it's a risky business because people can leave, just like construction, because it's analogous to construction really. People can leave, they can come, they can go, whatever. Information gets lost. Now competitors steal your people, whatever. But unlike construction, there's a little bit of risk involved because you never know what the hell you're going to get into. But the difference is we know how to build things in construction, and we don't really know how to always build things in software because that's what we get hired for. We get hired for the thing, what's going to provide a competitive advantage or bring you up. So that means it's new. So
construction's got a set of plans that everybody's working off of, and technology sometimes is more creative, right?
Well, it's more dependent upon the fifth guy in the row doing something stupid that you never would have thought of, right?
Right. And then you have to go in there and solve the problem on how to fix what they need. Is that
correct?
Well,
correct.
But I mean, no, is that hard? What my thing is is that you said you hired people out. I mean, so you have people that are constantly, would you say they know more than you or just they know different than you?
Yeah, it's like the knowledge is perishable. Like if you're a carpenter, if you've been a carpenter 20 years, if you're actually a carpenter, because like some accountants, like they're the first year accountant for 20 years. They have 20 years experience, but they're still a first year accountant because they never learned anything, right? But there's some carpenters like that too, right? But there's some carpenters you talk to, and they're like basically the rocket scientist of wood. Right. I mean, and so, well, you can't do that because of weight and this connection and that and whatever. So it's the same thing in the technology business, except information perishes. So it's like, there's a new tech, like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of I have to switch my mind around to do this well, but like in construction, there might be a new technique you got to learn, right? But it probably will stay a while. Whereas in technology, that knowledge, you might master that knowledge, you'd be dead in 3 years.
It can be dead in a year. It looks like sometimes.
Well, no, it does, right? I mean, it gets surpassed. I mean, right now the AI thing is completely out of hand. We have a team that tries to keep up with it.
Really?
Organization, and it can't. You literally can't keep up with it because there's no point in investing in this particular frame model if it's going to be replaced in 3 or 4 weeks or maybe 3 or 4 days with something that's twice as powerful.
I know.
So it's like, so that's what I mean by it's the knowledge. If you master something today, you spend a deep investment in it. It's perishable. It could be gone tomorrow. My father used to say, because we were in a lawn and garden business, the problem is my inventory dies. Right.
Yeah. So I'm going to pull up a comment here, and then I've got a bunch of questions that I've written down that I'm curious about as well. So Joe, who is a very smart guy himself, I'll have to say, looking at the LinkedIn profile for Kurt, an interesting profile, seems like Kurt has been around the world and to the highest levels of success. Can he elaborate more on the Natural Law Institute and the lessons he has from life? I want you to do that. But first, I want you to talk about something that Joe speaks about often. I want to talk about intelligence as the umbrella of intelligence. Everybody wants to be smart, right? Yeah. And there's different types of intelligence.
I'll tell you what, they shouldn't, because you know what happens to smart people? They're sad and lonely, most of them.
Right. Yeah.
Because they're alone.
Right. So, well, I think that's probably an excellent point, but we look at like emotional intelligence. We talk about, IQ versus EQ. Is there a difference in these types of things? And then you've got people that know a lot, that have a lot of information, right, Kurt? And then but then you have these other folks that have this logical and reasoning skills. So I wanted to get your kind of thoughts on that.
what equates a highly intelligent person.
Yeah, and the different types of intelligence. I know that's a very broad thing, and you can go in a lot of different directions.
It's more like, okay, so there's a couple of basic rules. First of all, that despite what all the philosophers want you to believe, turns out that the brain is a really simple thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's just lots of it. Right? I mean, that's just really it. I mean, I can describe down to you, I promise you, from the origination of the neural tube, how the brain evolves, right? And sorts itself into connect. I know all what chemistry related, how it varies, whatever. But when you want to talk about how we actually think and behave, what the brain does is just a whole lot of stuff in parallel. Really, it's just, think of it this way: it's either a war or an economy for your attention. Right, and whatever gets your attention is the thing that's going to give you the most reward that it could find in whatever that war was out there. That's all. So it's not. I mean, so if you look at the brain, that's great. So you're asking me about intelligence. This is a thing I deal with a lot, right? Because there's a lot of unjustified envy of intelligence. So let me tell you why.
Yeah, I'd like to hear this unjustified envy. Yes. Okay.
It's not. It isn't. Right. So here's how the reality works: is that there are basically a couple. Psychology works by what's called the Big Five or Big Six model, right? And it's just a bunch of fundamental traits they've figured out over time. This Big 5-6 model is reducible, to basically a sort of bias in three chemistries. And I don't want to get into, like I said, I can be way too nerdy. And by the time I finish with one topic, we'll forget what the hell we're talking about. We'll go to the next one. So I'm not going to go down to that level, right? So, but basically, so if we want to get back to what does intelligence mean? IQ, so if you look at the personality traits, conscientiousness, which we would think of as a responsibility, is most important. It's more important than intelligence. You're more likely to be wealthy or successful, regardless of your intelligence, if you're conscientious.
Yeah. Oh, I agree with that. I agree with that.
All right. Neuroticism is not good. It's what generally separates men from women. Right? Is that the tendency to worry about stuff you don't need to worry about? That's harmful.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'm working on it, Kurt.
Well, no, look,
that's good. I mean, I've just never heard. Don't worry. But you saying it like that, it's like that's harmful.
Right. But you got to think of nature. Nature's job. A woman needs to, by the age of 14, be able to extend her attention and emotions, her whole nervous system, over offspring. And so that's what nature did. It makes I've got to worry about a lot of stuff that I don't have to be in control of worrying about.
Right.
So it's just really, so the problem is, like any trait, it can get too far. Like conscientiousness can turn into obsessive compulsive. Right. So the third thing is what we call intelligence. Now let's understand what intelligence is. It's a really stupid thing. It's the fact, right? When they laid the underground cable from London to New York, I think that's where it was. It might have been Nova Scotia. I can't remember exactly how it worked. Right? They discovered that there was friction to the transmission of information across the cable, right? And there's a formula for this. I'm going to quote the formula, obviously, because that's crossing into nerd territory, but there's a formula for this. Guess what the formula of the neurons in your brain do? Exactly the same
as that.
So basically, you've got a brain. It's either bigger or smaller. It has more gray matter, which is computational, and more white matter, reduces the cost of transfer, reduces friction, right? So you'll find men with more gray matter and women with more. Why? Because the nature divided us by time. Remember, we got hemispheres, right? So it used to be worms, right? And we doubled over. How do you make the two sides of your body work together? Somebody's got to decide.
Right.
So nature made a decision. It said, in time prey, female, over time predator, male. And it said, okay, whatever you're doing, this is how we choose. Remember, nature isn't smart. It doesn't know anything. It just does what works by the thing that requires no planning. So that's what happened. Now, so what does intelligence mean? intelligence means, given that there's a basic difference, and remember, there's nobody that's purely male or purely female cognitively, right? We overlap a lot. I mean, stereotypes are vaguely true, but there's men who are very emotional and emotionally rewarding. And so,
or that worry a lot. I worry a lot. So.
Well, I do too. I mean,
yes.
Jesus Christ. Anyway, so anyway, so if you get out there and you say, well, so intelligence is really just the friction as it works through those biases. You either have less friction or more. Now, what causes friction? Well, it's mostly just how it organized, right? And the rest of it's biochemistry, right? I mean, it's just the bio. It's like saying, well, I mean, if it's gotten all the right chemicals at all the right volumes, and it's a high, because your brain is like 20% of your energy, right? It's really expensive. It's many more times. It's 11 times more expensive than muscle. Brain's really expensive, so it's really costly to run that thing. So so now the next thing is, hold on. So there's some of us who are, I'm on the autistic spectrum, as you can tell, because I'm a nerd, and I'm at the very low end, right? I overstate it just to give people stop teasing me about it.
You know what? As a side point, my daughter keeps saying, "Mom, I really think you need to get tested on that. You're somewhere on there." So
you probably are. I mean, I can, if I talk to you for 10 minutes offline, I can tell you. But,
yeah. Okay.
Right. So basically, it's not that complicated, right? I mean, it's just so if you say emotional intelligence or it's just the brain is either organized to predict as prey or predict as predator. The brain, which is controlling this or perceiving this, right? Prey or predator, right? And so predator's got to be fast. And prey's got to be aware, right? So now take those things and say, well, now how does that apply? Well, the second thing is empathizing versus systematizing. Females need to empathize because they need to extend their, men gotta systematize because we got to worry about overtime, in time versus overtime. So when you say that's not true. The intelligence is the same. It's just what do you care about? And what you care about is what your biology rewards you for caring about. Does that make sense? So like when you're
that just made sense to me, y'all. It's like I understood what you're talking about.
It's just bias, right? So you like, I like, I'm trying to pick up something on you. You said earlier on in your, which was a good. The sponsor's was a good person. I like that sponsor. If you went into, what do you and I and whatever feel, there's like vanilla and chocolate.
Yeah.
Right? Well, why? Well, there's no fucking reason. Right. I mean, right? So when you're in the womb, right, you're evolving, your brain starts with this tube and it eventually makes, your body starts with this neural tube and eventually your brain comes out of this thing in a very strange, fascinating hierarchy of developments, right? And so what happens is your nerves, they all have little tips on them, right? And they sort themselves into the part of the brain that they, in other words, they sort themselves into the part of the brain that has the chemical that they're looking for. So in utero, a lot of what we call initially intelligence is just the performance of the resistance or lack of resistance of the transmissions given the organization that happened in utero and after. And there are basically two ways of looking at it. In the feminine side, it's all integrated. So that's why it's overwhelming. And in the male side, it tends to be compartmentalized. And so when you get a hyper male like me, you're autistic. On the autistic spectrum, everything is a little, and this is why women make fun of men. This is this men are in a box, right? Women don't have boxes. Every drawer is open in their mind at all fucking times. And I always think of it. Try to explain to guys. Imagine you're sitting at your Windows computer and windows are popping up all the time, making it impossible for you to concentrate.
That's it.
That's what it's like to be a woman. Here's what it's like to be a man. I open the fucking window, and that's the only window. When I close that one, there's nothing going on, nothing. Right until I open another one. And I think about that one. So it's like we sort of work by opposite means. Why? Because nature evolved us to divide the labor of cognition, perception, sensory perception, cognition, auto-association, and prediction. So it's more common for women to predict emotions more frequently, which is in time, and more common for men to predict outcomes over time. right? And that's the difference.
Mm-hmm.
So what's intelligence?
Yeah.
Intelligence is useful in that you want to have enough, right? Below 85 or so, you're down in there. It's hard to hold a job because it's hard to manage your life.
Mm-hmm.
From 85 to 115, which is sort of like the average of almost everybody.
Yeah.
It just matters what kind of career you can do because the rate at which you can learn. That's all.
I would say, or I'd love to hear what you think, Kurt, maximizing, and part of the reason I love finding kind of these outliers and whatever area is that we're talking about, it kind of helps us understand ourselves better and kind of scale where we are, because self-awareness, in my estimation, to your point, if we know where we are and we understand our strengths and our weaknesses and not delusional in that way, then we can place ourselves in positions to maximize those strengths. Right. So self-awareness, if you're in that 85 to 120 and you know what strengths you have, then you can put yourself in a position to be successful.
The truth is so I didn't finish my earlier point, which is, so now that I've got enough information above 140, like guys like me.
And me.
What?
And me. Go ahead.
You too?
I'm just kidding.
Oh, no, I don't know. I don't know the answer. It could be. I don't know. So the problem is, if you're above 140, it matters more about how obsessive you are, how much work you put into it, and what you chose to do. Really? I mean, that's all that matters. Like, I can tell you, like, Noam Chomsky is quite a bit smarter than I am, and I can do, because I simply can't hold as much context over time as his ability to stack up things and remember what he's talking about.
Okay, I see now kind of where you're going there. Okay,
right.
Almost like you're saying we all have the same potential for the intelligence. It's just what we can personally handle. Like you're saying that those with that 140 IQ, he can compartmentalize and pull it when he needs.
It's so different from pick and wait. Right. And so like there's a mathematician who's in string theory who's famously known for being, just absolutely insanely smart. Right. He's not right, but he's just, he's often wrong, actually.
Really?
That's interesting.
But his math is really good. In other words, the problem is he likes the math so much, his ability to turn it into engineering. Right. That's the problem. Engineering, physics, mathematics. Right. Is it engineering is the real world. Physics is and math is, well, it could be anything. Right. Because math is just a language. Right. So it's just another language of describing things that are continuous. When the world is discrete, like engineering, in other words, the world's made of little things that have to work together. Right. There is no average. There's just whatever you got there. Right. So math tends to allow us to do really useful things to make it easy for us to grasp. But computation, on the other hand, like that's do this, then do that, then that's just like engineering.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I can listen to this guy talk and I can see what he's doing, right? I understand exactly what he's talking about, but I couldn't hold all those variables in my head like he can.
Yeah.
Right? So like if I look at something, I'm probably going to understand it faster than
most.
The average dude. Faster than the average.
And even the above average dudes. It's just not normal. The difference is it's mostly autism. In other words, I just don't stop. Does that make sense? Most of us want to stop. We want to get to an answer. But for me, I don't. So I solve problems the way Einstein talked about. I just work at it longer than anybody else is willing to. Right. And so
you solve the problem, then what? You keep going? You keep wanting to see.
Because every time you pull a layer of the onion, there's another reduction underneath that. In other words, what caused that? We're down in the world where, we know what the quantum background is. And if we could get rid of this generation of physicists, we could bring up the next generation, hopefully, who would overcome their mathematical addiction and return to what we would think of as real physics instead of mathematical physics. Because that work is out there floating around. There's too much money in careers invested in the academy to fix physics right now. So it's not like we don't know this, right? Right. So sort of like the humanities is broken. We just can't. We have to wait for all these people to die off.
You got to wait a little while because we got too much invested in it.
We got too much invested in it. So physics is the same way. So underneath that, we have a fairly good idea how this works. But it looks like if you understand the hierarchy the universe, which I do painfully, there's either one or two more layers down below the quantum level. It looks like there's probably two. So we have a long way to go. But the truth
Talk
is,
about granular.
right? I mean, so it's like you can't. There's certain things you can't say. So there's certain things we can say is that at the level of human beings, right? Mass, which means mass, right?
Mhm.
Right. At the level of mass, there's nothing we sort of don't understand, right? There's the things that we might be able to do with mass that we don't yet know, but it's like chemistry. Chemistry is basically solved. It just means, it's just more and more. We know the Lego block. There's only so many Lego blocks, right? And everything else is, what can you do with these Lego blocks?
Yeah.
That's why computers are necessary, because humans can't do it because it's too complicated, right?
Mhm.
Well, there's a couple of levels down beneath what we've got now in the quantum background, which really is more like, think of it as water, different kinds of, oil and water. I would think of it more like just like there's oil and water, there's like 20 different kinds of oil and water in the quantum background, and they're all different densities and frequencies and stuff. But it's really way more like, the space is way more like boiling water than we want to. It's a lot easier to conceptualize that way.
Huh. Now, I've got a couple of things that I want to bring up.
Wait. Did I answer your question on intelligence?
You know what? You gave us a lot of information, a lot to think
I'm
about.
Summarize in one thing. Make everybody feel good. Here's a
There
graph.
you go.
Can you see my fingers? There's a graph, and it levels out at the top. It levels out at the bottom. So above 85, you start to get better income with intelligence. But above 125, you don't. In other words, so if you want to talk, why? Because a guy like me, right, guys like us, we are happy to live with nothing.
Yeah.
Right? We don't.
It's not about achieving. It's not about attaining and acquiring. It's about just.
It's all in here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, it didn't stop me from being wealthy, but I mean, most people. I only made money, so I didn't have to be trapped by the politics of the academy. So I actually work on what I wanted to instead of lie about it. So,
I heard about this high IQ guy that was living on the side of a mountain that never really accomplished much of anything. But he was, I don't know, maybe you know who that was. But I to your point, I think he was happy just doing his own thing, right?
Well, I mean, people are frustrating. If you're very smart, people are frustrating because you want to help them and you can't.
Yeah.
So that's the really hard part. So to me, I struggle to, how can I help everybody? How can I produce something that's going to help everybody? But I have to struggle to make it so that they can understand it. And I think I have. I mean, it's taken not just me, but my whole team to do it. But it's getting.
Well, what I love, Kurt, for someone like me, I have a high school education. That's as far as I've gotten. But I will.
Yeah, you probably have a good character.
I'm sorry.
Maybe you have a good character.
Yeah. Well, what I do appreciate, I appreciate that. What I do appreciate about your tweets though is it takes a while for me to digest it, and I'll have to pull out Google and I'll have to look at words. And then it'll say, man, that is an interesting thought, and it's a deep thought, and I like thinking deep, right? And when it gets you, it's like solving a puzzle. It's like, I understand what he's saying. And then when I kind of reverse engineer that, then there's, like Joe's talking about here, there's ways that we can apply that because it's a deep truth that we don't think about. That gets lost. We don't think we need a mind like Kurt's that's thinking about like these things, and then we can kind of apply it to our world so to speak, in a way that's applicable. So I've got to ask you, Kurt. So I guess do you watch movies and things like that? I mean,
I believe it or not, I watch most movies that come out, even the bad ones. I have a problem with comedies because
I do too.
So comedies make me feel embarrassed. So
I'm embarrassed for them.
Yes, exactly.
I am. I like ones that.
Jenny, you don't have to go take a test. You're on.
That's gonna make her feel good.
I just don't. I'm serious. It's like I like movies that you have to think. And that really, like go ahead, Daniel. I know where you're going.
No, you ask him, where am I going? You say it.
Well, I just know Daniel doesn't watch movies. Okay.
I don't watch movies, but I do have one that I wanted to ask Kurt about.
Well, he's watched it. So just go ahead.
Good Will Hunting.
Of course.
Yeah. You like that movie?
Well, it's too much like my real life.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
No, it isn't, because my father was pretty horrible, really.
Oh.
Well, what I would say though, Kurt, what I love about that movie is the way that no one can. At the end of the day, we're all humans, right? I mean, you're a human. We're all humans.
Yeah.
We're not all the same, but we're all humans, right?
Yeah,
I see you thinking there. What are you thinking?
There's no recipe for a human.
Mhm.
But there's a limits to what can survive as a human. In other words. But
Limits to what can survive as a human. Okay.
right. So that's how nature figures out what, if it tries something, it doesn't work, it doesn't live. So, I mean, right.
Yeah.
So, but the flip side of that is we're marginally indifferent. And so the point I try to make in my work is that, yes, there are sex, class, and race differences, and yes, they're substantial. But the rules by which we can cooperate morally are actually very simple and very easy, and can be written down in a form that's testable and unavoidable. And I would say that's the laws of the universe, right? There's a physical law, behavioral law, evolutionary laws, and logical laws. Well, the behavioral laws for cooperation turn out to be pretty simple, and we've discovered them both empirically and rationally. In other words, it's just turned out that what we thought was true, which was back when Aristotle wrote about natural law, what the church thought about natural law, and what our founders thought about natural law was an incremental progress toward a pretty accurate description of the science of human cooperation. And in fact, if you look at our Constitution, there's about 6 or 8 holes in it, depending on whether you think they should have known something in advance, which means there's 8, or things that they could have said at the time to make it clear, which means there's 6 holes. And that comes very close to a science of cooperation. And all I have done, honestly, is make it a science and a formal logic that isn't open to interpretation. And I didn't set it out to do that. I set out to make a value-neutral language of ethics and politics, just so we could cooperate, because I hate conflict. So, and what the end result was, oh, I get it. There's been some really smart people in history, and they almost got there. And we just didn't know some things until the 20th century, because for a variety of reasons. We just didn't know enough to be able to finish the natural law.
What was going to be happening at that point?
Just scale. I mean, just scale of the problems we encounter in modernity is huge.
Yeah. Kurt, I want to bring up a comment. Jeannie, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, you know what? When you were just talking just then, I don't know. It made me think of, I'll bring Joe back up. It made me think of Jurassic Park. That Dr. Ian, and he's talking about how nature finds a way to survive. It will find a way. You talking like that, I was like, okay, I know.
Oh, and now you just reminded me. I've got to ask you too. The Laws of Human Nature. That's one of my favorite books. What do you think of Robert Greene? Have you read some of Robert Greene?
I do, but Robert has an agenda that I'm not too keen on, and so it came out in the first book, The Laws of Power. What I really loved about that book is his understanding of the different means of human learning. And so he organized the information so it can be understood based on whatever way you understood the world. I thought that was genius. I also thought it was a work of immorality, which is true, but I didn't really like it very much. In other words, it tends to be mostly what immoral people do, which is how he could have just said the laws of immorality or the laws of coercion rather than the laws of power.
Well, what's interesting about Robert Greene, and I don't know if Jeannie's read any of Robert Greene, but he wrote a book called The 48 Laws of Power was one of them, and the Laws of Human Nature. And in the Power book, he talks about, he went into the world thinking that everything was rainbows and butterflies. So he's a smart guy, an intelligent guy, has some skills, but he got into this Hollywood, cutthroat world where he's, don't outshine the master. Basically, he did some good work, and he thought his boss would be proud of him.
I was just talking about this book. I might not have been clear. So I understand. He really did. And the truth is that people aren't moral. People are amoral. In other words, we're moral because it happens to be in our interest. But what it turns out is people are only as moral as they need to be to
As they
get
have
away
to
with.
be.
They have to be. And so what that tells us is that it's not so much we tell people what to do, how to live, because they'll just keep cheating. Because humans are inventive. What we have to do is build a science of what's immoral, right? Which is the natural law. The science of the natural law is just a science of what's immoral. We say it the positively, but what it really means is that we need to the common law evolves along with man so that we incrementally suppress each new innovation and immorality. But because it's only negative, in other words, just tell us what to do.
Mm-hmm.
The church
tells you what not to do.
The church tells you what to do, but the law only tells what not to do. Why? Because then it's free will for us to do what we can, right? And then we have free will to do whatever we can that's not unethical, immoral, or evil. Right?
Yeah, I do want to bring up Joe's comment here. He says, "I keep it simple, and when the heart in giving gets close to the head in computing or obtaining is what's important. Real intelligence is doing the right things for altruistic purposes, not just our own. Too many people spend so much time on achieving wealth, but missing out on family and real friends and relationships." So
he's confusing intelligence and wisdom. But yes, it's the true wisdom is I can tell you from my experience. I mean, when I got cancer the first time, I said, "Holy shit, what's important to me?"
Yeah.
When I got it the second time, I got a real clarification, which was, what's important to me? None of this. Right?
Really?
I don't care about the companies or the cars or the houses or anything else. What I care about is, do the people around me actually love me, or are they trying to get something from me?
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Do I want to spend time with them or not? And so I'm like, if you're not my friends and you're not doing a moral purpose, which is the purpose of my work, I just don't want to have anything to do with it. I don't want to do anything about it. And I stopped caring.
Yeah. What do you think, Kurt? Sorry, Jeannie, did you have a question?
You said you stopped caring? Is that what you said?
I stopped caring about things that I thought mattered, what didn't. And I only cared about things that truly mattered. Now that's wisdom, right? That's different from intelligence. Intelligence is just a resource. It's like force. You can put it to good or evil, right? It's just a force, right?
Well, that's interesting. Intelligence is a resource.
Wisdom is what you do with it.
Right. And wisdom, to Joe's point, wisdom when we choose altruistic endeavors and personal growth and things like that, we get more fulfillment in life.
Wrong with that for a minute?
I'm sorry.
I can science that if you want me to.
I do, but I've got so many other things I wanted you to talk about.
All right, go ahead.
Okay. He says wisdom done for the right ways is true intelligence, is my point. So that's fair.
I don't know. I mean, I can't. I don't get to do those things. I have to say it's decidable or not, it's deflated or not, or conflated or not. So if it makes them happy, fine. But I'll go with intelligence is just a thing that allows you to move faster or slower in learning and adapting. And wisdom is what you do with it, right? And you choose to do it. And I would say it doesn't hurt to be smart and wise. And that's probably the best way to answer his question.
It's kind of like laws and principles. You know what I mean? Laws can be based on principles. It's like what you're saying is you can take in all this intelligence and you could not be wise at all.
It's true. There's a lot of them. There's another really smart guy in the public sphere, and he's wrong, right? He's just wrong about what he says. And, he's very dedicated his life and his public persona to it. And so he's all over-invested in it. Is he wise? Well, he's smart. He's intelligent. He's but he's wrong. Not. So is he wise?
Now, I know on Twitter, Kurt, you attract some people that want to argue, want to debate. How do you feel about debating? Do you enjoy debating? Do you not enjoy debating? And do you think it's ever productive? What's your thoughts on that?
I can only debate with like professors or somebody of equal, because it's really frustrating, because I end up calling somebody stupid, ignorant, or immoral. And there's no value in that.
Yeah, they probably don't walk away feeling too good. They're like,
well, it just leads to, it doesn't help anybody. And most people, you understand that there's a male instinct, right? Which is where the debate, the male is to show dominance expression by achievement, right? Some sort of competitive achievement. Well, there's a whole lot of people in different sections that males especially, that try to show their dominance expression and basically their sexual market value. as through assertions. Now, the problem is that, given that they're, how do I do this simply? The problem is that women tend to move toward the same point, and men try to move to a spectrum, which is the libertarian sort of classical liberal / authoritarian spectrum, right? And so men tend to specialize, and women tend to generalize, right? Move towards this end. So the problem is you get these guys at all these little points on this compass. They're just full of shit. They're just dominant. They're just trying to express. They're trying to say, "I'm smart because I'm right." And I'm like, okay, you're not right. You're kind of stupid, and you're really ignorant. And honestly, because you're doing this, you think you're moral, and you're not. Why do I want to get on the conversation and tell somebody that? I'm not exactly winning hearts and minds. And any but other male that's invested in climbing that monkey tree for the extra banana status, right? He's not going to listen to me. He's already malinvested in it. So I don't find I can only really, I love interviews like this, which is called seek to understand, right? I can try to understand you. You can try to understand me. We can all learn from it. But in a debate, really, I'm going to win, honestly. I'm going to win. And if the person could handle it or could do it, but it's not going to happen.
I got a question.
Do that again. That was cute.
I got
that was way adorable. I
got a question right now. I have a question for you. So clearly, you've said, they would lose. If you were ever in a situation, let's just pretend that, okay, somebody's saying, and y'all are talking and you have a moment where you're like, oh, maybe they're right. Do you ever feel that way? And that you can say, okay, you know what? I'm wrong.
All the time.
Yeah.
I search my Twitter feed. I use the word sorry. It's almost always because I misunderstood the person.
Gotcha.
I'm misunderstood. And that happens. We do that. Language is only an approximation. It's not like so. So I misunderstand, and so you can search my tweet because I don't even like to. And people say you never admit you're wrong. But this is the opposite. I admit it openly and cleanly. The problem is you want me to be wrong about the thing you've invested your folly in.
Yeah.
And I'm not. I might be wrong in understanding you. Right.
Yeah. Well, I love the fact that you came on here to talk with us because, like you say, we may not be able to. I think if there's seeking to understand each other, and then there's personal growth, because that's what a lot of this is about. Personal growth, creating proximity to people that think differently, that see the world differently, and that helps you become more aware. It helps us become better humans, I think, in at the end. And especially if you don't go into it, like you were saying earlier, with a defensive egoic kind of, I need to protect who I think that I am, then you're a little more open to kind of just saying, hey, this is just a different way of approaching the world, right?
I'm not sure what that last bit meant, but what it means is that we all collect what's called a frame, our paradigm, right? That we work through the world, and we have to have it because the world is actually way more kaleidic. In other words, unpredictable than we can actually face if we thought about it. Right? This is why we have this need for mindfulness. It's why religion evolved, because we actually need it. And we may not need the kind of religion, this religion or that religion but we need some way of getting mindfulness. One of the ways we get mindfulness is to try to develop an understanding of the world so that we can predict our behavior in it and take actions that benefit us. Otherwise, we'd just be confused and fearful all the time, which is what you find if you find people who are alienated. So,
so did you ever, it's good to be as confident and obviously a lot, but were you ever in a situation to where if you just didn't know that or say you didn't want to exert yourself and say, you're wrong? Have you always been like, well, let me just hear them out? Or,
I always do it. Well, of course, you understand. So you're seeing me in my early 60s, right? I've read what I've read is abnormal right? The amount of information I've read.
I'm sure.
And the amount of time, like some people read and then they're like, Daniel went off and said, well, now I got to go look this up and I got to think about it.
Oh, he does.
Right. No, that's why he's underestimating his intelligence, which I can tell you he's doing, because he's got this stupid fucking trick in his head that college education makes you smarter. There's no evidence of it. So, so I'm going to go is that, so I just dwell on things and I don't work at it. I don't have to think about it. The machine in my head goes off and it just does it. So, I actually, if you ask the team, my standard of saying this is true is very, very high. My next standard is, it's like, that's the best we can know at present. But in order to do my work, I had to understand the fundamentals of literally every field because I had to correct every field. So, wow. So yeah, I know. I mean, it's not people, it's like they hear me online, think I'm some other political commentator with an opinion, right? But I had to go solve every field, and I've solved it by a way too dirty for this audience, right? But there's one basic rule to the universe, and as long as you understand that rule, you understand how to apply it and how it emerges at different scales, which we call the disciplines. And so I just tried to understand how that rule emerged in every discipline. So you get a handle for how the whole thing works. Now, it's hard to believe this, but it's not actually difficult anymore because of the internet to keep abreast of where the knowledge is across the spectrum anymore.
Yep.
You couldn't do that before our generation.
Yep.
And so, but previous generations, I used to tell people, look, I had to go to card catalogs, magazines, microfiche, right? And so it was so costly.
Yes.
To read a sentence.
Yes.
Whereas today, I mean, even now, I've got this one AI thing. I can't remember what it's called. It's called starts with E, Illicit, where it goes up and looks research papers for me. And it even summarizes the research papers.
Oh gosh! And you had one, Kurt. Speak to the one that listened to you and another gentleman talking that summarized the meeting notes and that. Do you remember that one?
Well, yeah, I mean, you could. I don't know what software you're using. Stream. So it's a plugin for. Zoom, because I even do my meetings on Zoom.
Oh yeah.
And it's a plugin for Zoom, and it does. I mean, it analyzes facial expressions, vocal tone, word pace, everything, and
wow.
It's insane. And so I used to take. It's kind of distracting to people if you're taking notes while they're talking.
Yeah.
But I'm an exhaustive note taker. Like I take tons of. I mean, they tease me about it all the time, right? So I take notes on everything, right? And then I think about it. So it's because it sticks if I take a note. Right?
Me too.
So, right.
If I write it down, it's like in bed.
Exactly, and that's why you write it down, right? I mean, so do that, and then what this thing does is it writes a summary, a list of the points you made. Who talked how much? It's always 80% me because I talk too fucking much. Excuse me, I curse. Who talked to what the sentiment was, what the reaction was. I mean, it tracks all this other crazy. It tells you like I curse too much. I didn't used to. I was raised as a good Catholic boy. I never cursed. I moved to Connecticut, associated with working class people for a year, and I started cursing, and now I can't get rid of it. So,
but this is an AI, right? You said this does all this, and so there are some benefits to the AI too.
Oh, there's wonderful benefits to it. I'm not. I mean, my original work is in AI, right? So I started back in the 80s, and so my original work was in AI, and I applied AI to law, which is I'm one of the first guys who wrote legal AI. So which is where I got my thinking from, right? I worked on this a long time ago. So when you look at these AIs, they're not that smart. They're just know a lot, right? So it's wide but shallow, but they'll get better over time. I'm not really sure. I mean, I know how to make a moral AI. In other words, you make just like in your head, you have a competition going on between ideas for your attention.
Right.
Right. And when something comes up and it gets your attention, it feels bad. And you're like, that might not be the moral answer. But you're going to have to make AIs that compete with each other. Right. And so, right now you can do it in the same AI. Right now they're doing it together. And that's my objection to it, is that they're doing it together rather than, because what I do is I just look at a field of possibilities and I say, what's ethical, not ethical, moral, whatever.
Mhm.
And then I say, okay, of those things, what can we move forward? Well, you can make an AI do that. So we haven't got there. We haven't got there yet. It's too early.
I know this gentleman. It's David Allison, and he says, "How has social media made it easier or harder, or no difference to have meaningful dialogue?"
Good science on this, really. Great question. It's made it easier to find people like us.
Mhm.
So it's made it easier for us to form tribes.
Mm.
But what it's doing is it's preventing this.
Mhm.
And preventing this is how we find compromises between tribes.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And so what's happening is that since we're continually reinforced, we're not compromising. You're seeing this is why the dating and mating and marriage market is breaking down. So it's breaking down across the whole society, not just we see it in the youngest people because they're the most susceptible to it, because they're most affected by it. But if you look at the book Bolding Alone, which started the analysis of it, the destruction of social cohesion, because there's no standard in the first place. We've removed all standards. We've licensed basically aggression, social aggression. We actually made it heroic to engage in social aggression. Not we have, certain groups have. And then lastly, now we're experiencing the social coherence, social interpersonal coherence breakdown. So, I would have, if as a libertarian, if you'd have told me 10 years ago that we need to be really cautious about social media, dating sites, stuff that I really object to, which is like OnlyFans, whatever. I would have been, oh no, people will self-regulate, and boy, would I have been wrong. Right?
Yeah, it's kind of fueled the fire to a certain degree.
Well,
right?
It just feeds the worst of us.
And don't you think that people hide behind it somewhat? I think that people, well, obviously they do, but it's real easy to type something in rather than me and you have a conversation face to face.
Well, Daniel, if I talk to you harshly, how tall are you?
I'm 6 foot.
Right. I would not talk trash to you face to face.
Right.
Because I'd be afraid.
Right.
Right. But if I don't like you, I can talk trash to you over the internet.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And the same thing with women. Women won't say that shit to you in your face.
Right.
Right.
But
but on the online they'll talk to you. I think it's the same thing. It's freaking horrible.
Yeah.
So it breaks down our basic respect for one another. Right. And that respect, that making sure we don't cross those lines, is what teaches us that we need to learn to seek to understand and seek. Compromise isn't always possible. Maybe disassociations, you do your way and I'll do mine. But if we've basically, like back in the 60s, we licensed nonconformity by moving the claim of criminality from aggression to force. And now people can aggress endlessly against each other, and then if you retaliate with force for that aggression, now you're the victim. You're the criminal.
You're right.
So they made it so we can't even punish people for being unethical, immoral, irreciprocal, rude, whatever they mean. Whereas, when I grew up, you got hit in the face. I got those chipped teeth.
Yeah. Well, hey, Jeannie, you got a question?
I have one thing I want to ask. Since Daniel was asking you about book, if there was one book that you were like, okay, this is the only book you can tell somebody to read, what would it be?
I can't. I've been asked this a question a million times.
Well, this is 1,000,001.
Well, I would say that.
Maybe just give me your top, really, I know you have several.
For normal people, I would say the best book to understand is John Haight's book, which is, can't believe it's escaped my mind right now. Books by John, John Haidt, Haidt or Haight, and it's called The Righteous Mind.
The Righteous Mind.
And I would say most people should read The Righteous Mind, and then there's no good book yet that takes the next level down, which is Sex Differences, although there is one by Simon Baron Cohen. not the same, not the comedian.
Yeah, I was going to say that surprises me.
Whoa.
And it is called.
You wrote down The Righteous Mind, didn't you, Daniel?
I did.
Yeah, I know. I saw you. I did.
Hey, no, that was a great question. I'm glad you're asking that.
Yeah, because I was just thinking, obviously you read a lot. Well, you probably read the World Book and Funk and Wagnalls and everything.
You probably read encyclopedias.
Yeah. So I'm just like, what is something everybody should read?
Yeah.
Us common people.
I can't find it. There's a book by anything by Simon Baron Cohen. He started out with autism, and that led to understanding the sex differences in brains.
Oh, I have one more question, Daniel. Are you part of Mensa?
I consider it shallow posturing to join Mensa. So I would. It's like I need somebody's approval. I don't know.
I know it's not necessary. I'm just saying it's like
I mean, I don't think there's any doubt. Right.
I don't think there's any doubt. I just wanted to hear.
But I just, if you meet those people, there's a certain kind of thing there, and I'm just not part of that thing.
Yeah. It's just like a status.
Well, this has been a lot of fun. One of the things that I always get one takeaway, and the big takeaway for today is from the question about tribe. That we had the question about social media, and it does. If like-minded people, they get together. I feel that way with Kurt and some of his friends there on Twitter. I'm like, hey guys, I want to play too, but it's a little over my head, right? But
you shouldn't think that, because I can guarantee you, like just talking in an hour, it's not over your head. It might take you a year, but it's not over your head.
It's not over. And I love to see. I jot down little things too about how you said intelligence is a resource and wisdom's what you do with it.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. I love that.
The reason, I'll tell you why. People get into this thing of, my car mechanic is smarter than I am about cars. Mm-hmm. Well, that's true, but he's also spent more time mastering it.
That's right.
So you can't get into this thing. Intelligence is a resource, and all it does is buy you time.
Yeah.
Right? Time and abstraction.
Yeah.
For some people, the abstraction is too hard, right? They just can't ever get there, because holding that, remember the stack, holding that much stuff in their head at once is too hard.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's not a problem.
And one final thing, and Kurt, thank you for bringing the tribes together, right? There are these tribes, but then if we can bring tribes together, I think there's so much to be learned from the other tribes, right? I think that if we can do that, and then we can all grow as tribes.
Correct. Can I give you guys a compliment before we sign off?
Absolutely. We love compliments here.
Oh, no.
We need the validation.
I rarely do it.
So we'd be in it.
I rarely do interviews.
Yeah.
And I'm happy that I did this one.
Great.
Me too.
And I'll tell you why, is because there aren't enough moral people in the world doing interviews, and you are. So thank you for what you've done.
Thank you.
I wish you best of luck and success.
Thank you, Kurt. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Went a little over time, but that's okay. Had a lot of questions to talk about. And hey, we got Joe here. I appreciate Kurt at the same time being as defined as a high IQ level. It appears to be important as technical ways, yet there seems to be a conflict unless the moral mentoring momentum is to bring people together for true human relationship. This is a great purpose in the end, the win. Without agape love towards one another,
there is no wisdom.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
I would love to come on sometime and do a show on that subject.
Well, then let's do that.
That would be a great single subject show.
We need to narrow down a topic, because
I didn't know where to go with this. I had so many different. Normally, someone comes on, we talk about, it kind of has a normal kind of, but it's more like boom, it could go.
There's a lot that we could.
There was a lot of rabbit holes. There's a lot of rabbit holes,
and the rabbit hole that I went down.
Because the spectrum of grammars, but the universe, the spectrum of disciplines is everything, and so there's a lot of rabbit holes in everything. So anyway, I think that he's asking a profound question, and it's specifically very important for the Christian, those of us who are in the Christian universe. I think it's a very important question. So I'd love to come on there and explain that, because when I came up earlier, I said, "Well, you want me to science that for you?" That's what I want to science.
That's what you okay.
I want to prove I want to say he's right, but I want to qualify it and science it.
You
So
Yeah.
can
I think it's
Science.
conversation.
scientifically. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Joe's a great friend. Kurt, you're a great friend now, and we'd love to have you back on. So we'll talk soon. And I'm gonna be commenting on your Twitter. So when you see Gone Data, you know who it is. Okay.
All right, but I have to make. I'm going to tease you like I tease everybody else. I mean, that's
Yeah.
part of the.
Well, then
Oh,
you
absolutely.
want it any other way.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
exactly.
All
You
right.
guys are adorable. Thanks a lot.
Thank
Had a
you
good
so
time.
much. Thank you.
Thanks. See ya.